You weren't trying to get rid of me, were you? I didn't think so. Okay, so I want you to pause the video and I want you to try solving these next two all by yourself. And then you can restart the video and I'll have the work all there so you can double check yours. Okay, see you in a sec. You weren't cheating, were you? Trying to look at both the answers at once. So there's the answer to the first one, and pause the video in case you were cheating and check your answer. Work the answer to D and then check it. Okay, so here it is. I solved. I'm less than or equal to -5 halves or greater than or equal to 7 halves. Notice I do use the brackets on the -5 halves and on the 7 halves because those are closed dots. So those numbers are included. Again, open parentheses around infinities. Okay, on to the next thing. So these next two problems, 7 and 8, leave them blank. We are going to do them together in class because I want to see how much you remember. Okay, so moving on to number 9. I'm going to guess that any memory of how to solve these problems is back so far in the recesses of your brain that you'll never retrieve it. So when I'm looking at letter A, I have to remember it's a rational inequality. I can tell that because there's fractions. And I want to do two things. Number one, I want to find the no-no numbers. That means whatever can't be in the bottom, and I got to pick those out right away because I got to make sure I circle them on my number line. And also I want to make sure that I'm looking for the zeros, so I've got to get that thing equal to 0. So I'm going to do that next. Okay, so first thing I did is I wrote down my no-no number. So I have a discontinuity at a equals 1. In other words, a can't be 1 because it'll cause that denominator to be 0. And I've moved the 7 6 over, and at the same time I rewrote 1 so that it had a common denominator and I could subtract those two fractions. Okay, so now I have to get a common denominator, which is 6 and then a minus 1. So I'm going to give everything that. So you can see I had to multiply the first fraction by a minus 1 and the second fraction by 6 in order to get that common denominator. And then I simplified the top, making sure that I distributed this -1 to the parentheses. And now I'm going to multiply both sides by 6 times a minus 1 so that I can clear that denominator. And it'll look like this. And then solving for a, I get. Now, here's the reality when I'm actually solving for the zeros is I don't even need to put in the inequality symbol. I could have let this be an equal sign all the way down because I'm really trying to find out exactly where it does equal 0. So that means I'll have a 0 at 31. So now I'm going to draw a number line and I'm going to place the discontinuity on and the actual 0. So it'll look like an open circle at 1. I can't use that. Now I'm also going to have an open circle at 31, but that's because this original inequality had no equal sign. And then I'm going to have to test each region. So I'm going to test to the left and see what happens. I'm going to test in the middle and see what happens, and I'm going to test to the right and see what happens. Okay, so here's what the first test looks like. I tested 0 because that was to the left of 1, and so I put 0 in for A, and then I simplified it all down, and it turns out to be true. -4 is less than 7 6, so I want to shade on that side. Now I'm going to test in the middle, and it looks like this. So definitely 7 is not less than 7 6. That's false, so I won't shade there. And then I'm going to test to the right. Notice I chose a number that would make my fraction reduce easily, so I chose 36 because I knew I'd have 35 on bottom. And now it's the trick of how do I tell if 8 sevenths is less than 7 6 or not. So here's the little trick that I use is I just multiply across, and this one's 49, and if I multiply across this way it's 48, and 49 is bigger, so this side is definitely bigger, so this is true, and I would shade on this side. And then writing my picture in interval notation, this side goes from -infinity to 1, open circle, so I use a parentheses. It's an or because they're not attached, and then this side starts at 31 open and goes all the way to +infinity. See you in the next video, kids!